cardio: high intensity interval training, high intensity steady state cardio, low intensity steady state cardio. Now the thing about cardio is anything that trains your heart or anything that works your heart is cardiovascular training, but different versions of cardiovascular training have different benefits, and they use different substrates for fuel. A substrate would be like, is that a glycolytic movement, which like push-ups is glycolytic, right? Or is it oxidative? Oxidative is using body fat for the fuel. So there's a bunch of substrates in between, and there's combinations, but just to make it simple, I'm just going to talk about those two. So for high intensity interval training, the main benefit to that is hypertrophy, or increased strength of the muscle and size of the muscle. So it's really the only form of cardio that actually makes you stronger, or can actually make your muscles bigger. And the reason for that is we stay pretty much in the glycolytic pathway. So before we get further into this, this orange is going to be fat, the red is going to be oxidative pathway, or burning amino acids or muscle, and then the green is going to be burning sugars. So you can burn muscle, you don't want to do it all the time, but there is a form of cardio that pretty much only burns muscle, which we'll talk about also. So hopefully what's going to happen in high intensity steady state cardio is that we start, so our heart rate's really low, let's say your resting is whatever, 70 beats a minute or something like that, and then that's about 130 when you come out of the zone where you're burning body fat, and you go into burning some sugar up in here. So what's supposed to happen is you come up here and you peak and you come back down and you recover. You don't recover down to resting, hardly anybody does in between rounds. If you guys watch your heart monitor, you never get back down to resting again, because that's part of recovery. It's called exercise post-oxygen consumption. So after you're done training HIIT, another benefit besides muscle building is the fact that it takes so long to recover, your metabolism is actually boosted for the next 72 hours. And it consumes extra oxygen in that process in order to do that. So then you do another round and you go up a little higher, and then you stay a little higher in between the next round, and you go up another round and you go a little higher. And then for the rest of the day, it slowly trickles back down, just like that. So that's the whole benefit, is HIIT training is glycolytic. HIIT training builds muscle. HIIT training is not oxidative, so it doesn't burn amino acids or muscle in the process of doing the HIIT. You can make HIIT bad though, that's the thing. Some groups only want to push, more rounds, whatever, right? And the problem with that is you might end up burning a bunch of muscle in the process. If you keep your heart rate high long, if you turn this, what's supposed to be a spike, into a plateau at the top, and then you recover here, and then another plateau, and then you recover here, and then another plateau, you might spend half the workout burning muscle instead of building it. Does that make sense? So it's not always good to just have that high heart rate for an extended period of time. And I don't know, for some people it's an ego thing, I guess, like seeing who the last man standing is in a workout. And then we have low intensity steady state, or this is just what we call cardio, regular cardio. There's a couple benefits to that. It takes a little bit to get up to your cardio range, but once you're there, you kind of bounce your heart rate up and down on that line, burning the most amount of fat possible. Burning some sugar isn't necessarily bad for you, it just burns less fat. In the grand scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal if you bounce back up and down over that line there. Now the benefit to that is the majority of calories you burn during low intensity steady state is fat, and the fat comes first out of the blood, which lowers the cholesterol and triglycerides and keeps our heart healthy. That's why the minimum standard by the American Heart Association is 225 minutes of cardiovascular training a week. That's what keeps your heart healthy as you age. That's the minimum for that. And the reason they recommend that is because you do not want triglycerides or cholesterol hanging around in the blood. So that's a good way to get them out of there. The second benefit of low intensity steady state cardio is you can literally do as much as you want without any breakdown of the body happening. You do too much HIIT, the body's going to break down. You can do this for hours and hours and hours if you had time for it, and you would just burn more fat, burn more calories, get leaner. And in the process, you would partition nutrients better. So third benefit of low intensity steady state cardio is nutrient partitioning. So what that means is how fast your body takes a protein and it puts it in the muscle is increased anytime your heart rate is elevated just a little bit. How fast your body takes a carbohydrate from the liver and puts it into the muscle, or from your breakfast and does the same thing. how fast the body takes a triglyceride out of a fat cell and chops it up into some glycerin molecules for your body to use. It speeds that whole process up. So along with the heart health and macronutrient partitioning, the main benefit to low intensity steady state is going to be endorphin release. So endorphin relief, mainly being dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, and those hormones are all going to make you feel good and positive and kind of ready to move forward. And so when you do your cardio, yes, you're going to have a longer life and your heart's going to be healthier. Yes, you're going to partition your macronutrients better. It's in the long run going to make you a lot stronger and increase your performance. But the main benefit actually comes from the release in the neurotransmitters that keep you positive. So the main benefit about cardio is you just have a better outlook on life. And so if you can do that at the same time as actually living longer and partitioning your macronutrients, it kind of ties everything in together. So that's the importance of it. And since the heart rate is so low and there's virtually no impact with it, so there's no negatives for the joints, you can do a ton of it. And the main thing I change when I start peaking for an event in the summer is I just do way more cardio. It's just part of it. Then moving on, we have high intensity steady state. So this would be like running a 5K, for example. Running a 5K competitively, I'll change that, because anybody can run a 5K like a leisurely stroll, and then it's just going to turn into some moderate cardio. But if you're running a 5K competitively, you're going to start from your resting heart rate. Not really, because when you get to the starting line, your heart rate's kind of already up there. But it's going to just jack up here and then kind of go off into that zone there. So, and the reason this bottom line is time and this is heart rate is because we have a cutoff. Everybody's body does, but there's a cutoff for how much sugar you can burn at high heart rate. And that cutoff typically is 13 to 20 minutes depending upon the person, which is going to be right there in this on this chart. 13 to 20 minutes is when you're out of sugar and you're burning muscle, which is not that big of a deal if you have plenty of amino acids in your system. You can kind of spare some muscle, or if you don't do it very often. So typically the people who run very often, you know that they're breaking down muscle because you can see it in their bodies. If you know a good runner, right, or someone who runs very often, they're stripped down of muscle. And just through the process of running often, their body has taken off all unnecessary tissue to make them better at this one thing, running, right? So the problem with that is that the majority of the fuel being used is an amino acid, and the heart is made of amino acids. And so over the long time of running as your primary method of training, you can actually break your heart down quite a bit. Now, I don't want to scare anybody from running. Running is a basic human fundamental movement. Everybody should be decent at it. But you shouldn't go crazy at it, just like you shouldn't go crazy at HIIT. There's a limit to everything. And the funny part about HISS is, let's say you run, if that's 13 to 20 minutes, let's say your 5K is here, right? That drops right back down to resting. Everybody who's run a 5K before knows that in 10 minutes, you feel like you didn't do anything anymore. So there's no exercise post-oxygen consumption. So that doesn't do really anything for the metabolism. It burns primarily muscle tissue, amino acids if you have enough in your system. And then it drops back down to resting, very rapidly. So it's something you want to do sparingly, but it is something you do want to get good at. You want to do it enough to be decent at it at the same time. So those are the three main forms of cardio and what the substrates are that are used for the cardio. And this last one, I just thought I'd demonstrate a few things when it comes to doing high intensity interval training or HIIT training that a lot of people don't know about. And this is going to be something that the faster you do a HIIT round, the more intensity you do a HIIT round in, the better the benefits are to the HIIT round. So if you were to come from this resting heart rate and go, above max, I guess. I'm going to say above max because maximum calculation is 220 minus your age. Now, all the research done on your maximum calculation was based on something that some doctor came up on a flight to Malaysia as far as my research is concerned. He just kind of arbitrarily made that number. Now, I routinely train above 100% max. A lot of people do, right? It's not that big of a deal. And it's not your max if you're going above that, which I always thought was weird. You know, if 100% is my max, how come I run a 5K at 110? So 110 is my max then. Or that's my new 100, and then I should, you know, whatever. But the quicker you do that and the quicker you get back down, the more benefits you're going to have from that HIIT training. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because what most people try to do with HIIT training is they pace. They go into it and they look at the board and they say, well, I got all this to get through, so I'm going to sort of go at a leisurely pace or something that's not too uncomfortable. And in doing that, you take most of the benefits to HIIT away. So if you can have this dramatic spike, the faster it goes up, the longer it stays up, right? And so if that person was to spike up like this, it might only come down to here and start to level out. And then your second round is there, and then it starts to level out. And then your second round is there. And then you follow this curve of amino acid / sugar burning for a long time. And when you follow that curve, you're burning the most amount of sugar possible just in recovering from the exercise. Exercise post-oxygen consumption. It's part of the metabolism that has to be there to regenerate ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, which is the main molecule that's used for muscular contraction. So if you do HIIT right, if you get up there as fast as you possibly can, you're going to drop down a lot lower. And then you repeat that process over and over again. Let's call those rounds. Then you're going to follow this curve. You're not going to burn any muscle. And the closer you can get to this curve without touching it, the more anabolic you are. Anabolism is when you're creating tissue. Catabolism is when you're taking tissue away. So you want to be catabolic when it comes to fat, but you want to be anabolic when it comes to muscle. And that's what we want to focus on. So when you look at your HIIT training, it should always be, I'm trying to kill myself, and I'm going to come down just a little bit. I'm trying to kill myself, and then I'm going to come down just a little bit. And that really is where all the benefit comes in. And that's one thing that's different per group. Every group has a different feel. And if you go to a group who's kind of at a less of an intensity, and you start to mold in with that group, you'll realize that the results just aren't quite there. And no offense to a group, I mean, obviously everybody's going to be different, and we do have a group for people that are over 60, and they're not going to be the same intensity as someone who's 20, right? But that's just kind of how it goes. So what I'm saying is that wherever you're at needs to be as much as you can possibly go, regardless of where your environment is. And best case scenario, what you really want to do is change the environment of the group by being that person and going as hard as you possibly can. Any questions about any of this? Did I leave anything out?
So looking at that last one, like if a lot of times we're doing reps for time, pretty much every time you're doing a new movement for whatever amount of time, you would want to try and go as hard as possible to spike that heart rate as high as possible, come back down in that 20-30 seconds of rest, spike, so it would be a lot more smaller spikes, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess the problem with specific movement, like today is a failure workout, right? So the muscles are going to fail over and over again. The heart rate's not going to be that high. You're going to spend most of the time on the ground, like stretching out after your push-ups. And we're going to program those in every now and then. And the whole point of that is to spend some time building some muscle, not necessarily jacking the heart rate up. But if you look at reps for time in its entirety, let's say 30 seconds on, 10 seconds off, and then you have 5 movements on the board. So those 30 seconds on better be fucking on. Does that make sense? And then you have 10 seconds. There's no recovery in the 10 seconds. Your body's really just trying to figure out what the hell just happened. And then you get to the next movement, and it's the same thing. You should act like you're being shot out of a cannon and go as fast as you absolutely can for that next one. So that whole reps for time round is going to be as high as you make it. So like everything, it is what you make it. Nothing works unless you do. Any other questions? Okay, good.